I think one needs both. One needs to be reactive and proactive. And I like to think of it in an analogy. It's a bit like having a fire alarm and running fire drills. A fire alarm one needs to keep a lookout for intrusive activity, perhaps from a competitor perspective. It's a bit like a tripwire. It's a bit like having a kind of a sense of what's going on in the marketplace around us, and making sure that we have our market intelligence radars up and are picking up what's happening and who's coming into our space, or who's perhaps becoming more and more of a competitor. Versus a fire drill, which is once the alarm is installed and that's running and operational, that one regularly practices scenarios, one regularly highlights what scenarios might happen, and maybe we ask ourselves questions like, what if competitor A had to do this, or what if competitor B had to do that? And if we ask ourselves those questions and play those kind of scenarios out, even to the degree of external forces, what if we had another COVID pandemic? What if something else happened in the external environment? How would we deal with that? How would we manage our way around that? And practicing that out in an organization, I think, is a really good thing to do, to regularly do fire drills, and obviously have the fire alarm in place, the ongoing market intelligence, the ongoing research tracking, the ongoing understanding of customer needs, but to also actively put in place mechanisms to play out scenarios with teams. And that can be quite fun, actually, if one thinks about it. It can change the nature of business as usual, because one's thinking a bit ahead, one's thinking in a what-if mindset, and that can be quite good for developing a culture of being proactive and of thinking what might happen and planning for it accordingly. And that builds then flexibility back into the way people operate day to day.
So stability in that context really refers to the inability to absorb information from an environment that's evolving and changing around you, and therefore an inability to course correct when you need to. That's detrimental isn't something that's new. We can think back to the late 70s, even with Kodak, as a great example of an organization that didn't react quickly or didn't take seriously enough a big change in its environment, the invention of the digital camera. Many years later, BlackBerry, another example, that was a leader within business communication, mobile communication, and they didn't take or react quickly enough to the onset of touchscreen technology. And then there are examples of companies that are that have adaptability built into who they are, and you see it within how they operate all the time. Amazon, Netflix, Disney are great examples of this. So companies have to be organic, like nature. And I keep referring back to nature, but learning from nature is, I think, really useful when we're talking about chaos. And the difference between being reactive and proactive comes back to strategy, comes back to long-term planning, but at the same time being really tuned into your environment. So things like market intelligence, live market intelligence is really important. Information that is fed into your organization, but also that's used to influence the decisions that you're making. Scenario planning, imagining different viable scenarios that could come to bear, and planning around those scenarios to ensure that you are actually proactive, but also able to react when the time comes.